The Galactic Concord Station hung in the empty space between three star systems like a jewel made of metal and light. It was massive. Over 2 million beings from hundreds of different species lived and worked inside its spinning rings. Diplomats came here to make peace. Merchants came here to make deals. And every species that thought itself important had an embassy somewhere in its countless corridors. The human delegation had arrived 3 weeks ago. They were new to galactic politics. Their species had only discovered faster than light travel 60 years before, which made them infants compared to civilizations that measured their histories in hundreds of thousands of years. Most of the older species treated humans the way adults treat children who have wandered into an important meeting. They smiled. They nodded. They waited for the humans to make fools of themselves. Ambassador Kethvorin of the Silithene watched the human delegation from across the great hall with something close to disgust. The Silithene were ancient beyond measure. Their bodies were made of living crystal that grew and changed over thousands of years. Kethvorin himself was 9,000 years old, and he was considered young among his people. He had seen species rise and fall. He had watched stars die. Very little surprised him anymore, but the humans had managed to surprise him, and not in a good way. They had brought animals aboard the station, not engineered creatures designed for specific tasks, not symbiotic partners who shared their thoughts through neural links, not even useful beasts of burden. They had brought pets, companions, creatures they called dogs. Kethvorin watched Commander Elena Vasquez walk through the hole with one of these animals at her side. It was a large creature covered in brown and black fur, with pointed ears and a long snout. It walked beside her without any visible restraint, simply choosing to stay close. Its tongue hung from its mouth, and its tail swayed back and forth as it moved. "Fascinating," said Verkel, Kethvorin's aide, though his tone suggested he found it anything but fascinating. "The creature appears to be happy simply to exist near the human." "It is called a dog," Kethvorin replied. "I have read about them. They are pack animals from the human homeworld. They live for approximately 15 standard years." 15 years? Vorkel's crystal face shifted in what passed for shock among the Silithene. "And they form emotional bonds with these creatures?" "Deep bonds, apparently. The humans treat them as family members. They mourn when they die." The two Silithene stood in silence for a moment, watching Commander Vasquez stop to speak with a Fanari diplomat. The dog sat beside her, alert and watchful, its dark eyes scanning the crowd as if it was her protector rather than the other way around. "I do not understand," Vorkel said finally. "Why would any intelligent being form an attachment to something so temporary? The grief alone would be unbearable." Kethvorin made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Humans are strange creatures. They live barely a century themselves. Perhaps they simply do not know any better." Nearby, a group of Varax warriors had also noticed the human and her animal. The Varax were reptilian beings, tall and heavily muscled, with 4 arms and scales the color of dried blood. They were a warrior species, and they had little patience for what they saw as weakness. "Look at the soft skin," one of them hissed to his companions. "She brings a beast to a place of politics. Does she think it will protect her?" The others laughed, a harsh sound like stones grinding together. "I have heard these dogs cannot even speak," another Varax said. "They have no true intelligence. They are simply biological machines that have been trained to follow commands." "And yet the humans love them," the first Varax replied. "They call them friends. Family. They cry when the creatures die." He shook his massive head. "No wonder humanity is so weak. They waste their hearts on things that do not matter." Commander Elena Vasquez heard every word. She had excellent hearing, and the Varax were not trying to be quiet. But she said nothing. She simply reached down and scratched behind the ears of her dog. A 7-year-old German shepherd named Max. Max had been a search and rescue dog on Earth before Elena brought him to the stars. He had crawled through collapsed buildings after earthquakes. He had tracked lost children through frozen forests. He had found survivors in places no human searcher would have thought to look. 36 people were alive today because of his nose and his determination and his desperate need to help. Now he was retired from active duty. But Elena had refused to leave him behind when she accepted the posting to Concord Station. The brass had argued. They had said it was unprofessional. They had said the other species would mock them. Elena had not cared. They don't understand, do they, boy? She murmured to Max as she stroked his fur. They don't understand what you are. Max looked up at her with eyes full of simple, absolute love. He did not know about galactic politics. He did not know that aliens existed before 3 weeks ago. He did not know that he was considered primitive and worthless by beings who had traveled between stars when his ancestors were wolves. He only knew that his human was here. And he was with her, and that was all that mattered in the universe. The Finari diplomat, a slender being with silver fur and large dark eyes, watched this exchange with curiosity. Unlike the Silithine and the Varax, the Finari were known for their emotional intelligence. They could read feelings the way others read text. "Commander," the Finari said softly, "I sense a great depth of feeling between you and your companion. May I ask about the nature of your bond?" Elena smiled. It was a real smile, warm and unguarded, the kind she rarely showed in diplomatic settings. "His name is Max," she said. "He has been with me for 7 years. He saved my life once during a training accident on Mars, and I would do anything for him. Anything at all." The Finari tilted its head. "But he will die long before you. Does this not cause you pain?" "Every day," Elena admitted. "I think about it every day. But that is exactly why I love him so completely. Because our time is short, every moment matters. I would rather have 7 years of loving him than 1,000 years of protecting my heart." The Finari had no response to this. It simply watched as Elena walked away, the dog padding faithfully at her side. Across the hall, Warlord Desik of the Varax hegemony also watched her go. His yellow eyes narrowed with calculation. He had lost territory to human expansion in the Kepler Reach 18 months ago. The loss had been legal. It had been sanctioned by the Concord. But it had been humiliating, and Desik was not a being who forgot humiliation. He had been looking for a way to hurt the human delegation. Now, watching the commander and her precious animal, he began to see an opportunity. The days passed slowly on Concord Station. Elena Vasquez fell into a routine. She attended meetings in the morning, wrote reports in the afternoon, and walked Max through the biodome in the evening. The biodome was the only place on the station with real plants and open sky, even if that sky was just a projection on the ceiling. Max loved it there. He would run through the artificial grass and chase the small maintenance drones that cleaned the walkways. For a few hours each day, he could pretend he was back on Earth. The mockery did not stop. If anything, it got worse as more species learned about the human and her animal. Delegates would approach Elena with questions that dripped with hidden insults. "Does your creature understand language? Does it know that it will die someday? Why do you waste your limited emotional resources on something so temporary?" Elena answered these questions with patience she did not always feel. She was a diplomat now, and diplomats did not punch aliens in their smug faces, no matter how much they deserved it. One evening in the biodome, a young Finari diplomat found Elena sitting on a bench while Max explored a patch of flowering bushes nearby. The Finari's name was Sella, and unlike most of the beings on the station, she seemed genuinely curious rather than judgmental. "May I sit with you, Commander?" Sella asked. Elena nodded, and Sella lowered herself onto the bench with the careful grace of her species. "I have been thinking about what you said," Sella began, "about loving your companion completely because your time together is short. I must admit, I do not fully understand. What part confuses you?" "All of it, if I'm honest." Sella's large eyes watched Max as he sniffed at a flower. "I will live for 2,000 years, if nothing kills me early. We Fenari have learned to guard our hearts carefully. We form bonds slowly. We love cautiously. To do otherwise would be to invite constant grief." Elena was quiet for a moment. She watched Max find a stick and carry it proudly in his mouth, tail wagging with pure joy at this simple discovery. "Can I ask you something, Sella?" "Of course." "In 2,000 years of being careful with your heart, have you ever loved anything the way Max loves me? The way I love him?" Sella did not answer immediately. She watched the dog bring the stick to Elena, drop it at her feet, and look up at her with such obvious hope and happiness that it almost hurt to see. "No," Sella admitted finally. "I have not." Elena picked up the stick and threw it across the grass. Max bounded after it, his whole body expressing joy in every movement. "That is the thing about mortality," Elena said. "It does not make love meaningless. It makes love urgent. Max does not know he is going to die someday. He does not think about the future at all. He just knows that I am his person, and every moment we spend together is the most important moment of his life." "That sounds exhausting," Sella said, but her voice was soft, almost envious. "It is. But it is also wonderful." Elena smiled as Max returned with the stick, ready to play again. "You have time to be cautious with your heart. We do not, so we are not careful. We love with everything we have, every single day, because that is all we get." Sella was quiet for a long time after that. On the other side of the station, in the section reserved for the Vorax hegemony, Warlord Desic was holding a meeting of his own. His forearms were spread wide as he addressed his lieutenants, his yellow eyes bright with cruel intelligence. "The human delegation grows comfortable here," he said. "They think they are safe. They think the Concord's laws protect them." "The laws do protect them, Warlord," one of his lieutenants said carefully. "If we attack them openly, the Concord will destroy us." "I am not a fool," Desic snapped. "I do not plan to attack them openly. But there are ways to hurt an enemy that do not leave obvious marks. There are ways to gain leverage without spilling blood." He pulled up a holographic display that showed Commander Vasquez walking through a corridor with her dog at her side. "The human's value. Individual lives above all else," Desic continued. "They would sacrifice much to protect a single person. And this one, this commander, is the daughter of a powerful human admiral. If we held her as a hostage, the humans would negotiate. They would make concessions. They would give us back what they took from us in the Kepler Reach. But how do we take her without being caught?" Another lieutenant asked. Desic smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "I will invite her to a cultural demonstration, alone, in a section of the station where my people control the security systems. Once she is there, we will jam her communications and take her quietly. By the time anyone realizes she is missing, it will be too late." The plan was not complicated. It did not need to be. Desic was counting on human politeness, their need to appear diplomatic and fair. They would not want to insult the Varax by refusing an invitation, what Desic did not plan for. What he did not even consider was the dog dot in the human quarters that night. Max lay at the foot of Elena's bed, his ears twitching as he dreamed. His paws moved slightly, chasing something in his sleep. Perhaps he was running through the forests of Earth again, tracking a lost child through the snow. Perhaps he was playing in the biodome, chasing drones and finding sticks. But part of him, the ancient part that remembered what it meant to be a wolf, was always alert. Even in sleep, some part of Max was watching over his human, protecting her, ready to wake at the smallest sign of danger. This was what the aliens did not understand. They saw a small mortal creature with a short lifespan and no special abilities. They did not see 40,000 years of partnership. They did not see the bond that had been forged when wolves first approached human campfires and decided to stay. They did not see the countless generations of dogs who had lived and died protecting their humans from every threat. They could imagine Max was not just a pet. He was the product of the longest partnership in human history. And when his human was in danger, nothing in the galaxy would stop him from reaching her. He just did not know it yet. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning. It was written in formal diplomatic language, full of polite phrases and respectful titles. Warlord Desik of the Varax hegemony cordially invited Commander Elena Vasquez to attend a private demonstration of traditional Varax combat arts. The event would take place in Observation Deck 17 in the outer ring of the station. Attendance would be limited to ensure an intimate cultural exchange. Elena read the invitation twice. She felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. She knew it was a trap. Everything about the invitation screamed danger. The private location, the limited attendance, the fact that Desik had never shown any interest in cultural exchange before. Every instinct she had told her to refuse. But diplomacy did not work on instinct. If she refused, Desik would use it against her. He would tell the Concord that humans were afraid of other cultures, that they insulted Varax traditions, that they could not be trusted as partners in galactic affairs. The damage would take months to repair. So she would go. She would walk into the trap with her eyes open, and she would hope that she was wrong about what waited for her there. She could not bring Max. The invitation specified that no companions, biological or mechanical, would be permitted. Elena told herself this was fine. Max would be safe in their quarters. Lieutenant Chun would check on him every few hours. Nothing would happen to him. But when she tried to leave that evening, Max blocked the door. He stood in front of her, his body tense, his ears flat against his skull. He was not growling, not yet, but his eyes held a warning she had never seen before. He knew something was wrong. He could feel it in the way she moved, smell it in the fear she was trying to hide. "Max, move," Elena said softly. "I have to go." Max did not move. He stared at her with those dark, intelligent eyes, and she could almost hear what he was thinking. "Do not go. Stay here. Stay safe. I will be back in a few hours," she promised. "Chun will take care of you. It will be okay." It was a lie, and somehow Max knew it was a lie. But he could not stop her, and eventually Elena slipped past him and through the door. The last thing she saw before it closed was Max's face, filled with desperate worry and something that looked very much like fear. Observation. Deck 17 was a long way from the human quarters. Elena walked through corridors that grew emptier as she traveled further from the station's core. The lights seemed dimmer here. The air smelled different, filled with the sharp scent of Varax cleaning chemicals. Desik was waiting for her when she arrived. He stood in the center of the observation deck, surrounded by 6 of his warriors. The deck itself was a large room with a curved window that looked out into space. It would have been beautiful if Elena had not been so afraid. "Commander Vasquez," Desik said, spreading his 4 arms in greeting. "How kind of you to accept my invitation, Warlord Desik." Elena kept her voice steady. "I look forward to learning about Varax traditions." "Yes." Desik's smile showed too many teeth. "I'm sure you do." The trap closed quickly after that. 2 warriors moved to block the door. Another pressed a device on his wrist that made Elena's communication implant buzz with static. She was cut off. No one could hear her. No one knew she was in trouble. "The humans took something from me," Desik said, walking slowly toward her. Land that belonged to my family for 300 generations. The Concord said your claim was legal. The Concord said I had no right to protest. The Concord made that decision, not me, Elena said. I was not involved in the Kepler Reach settlement. But your father was. Thesic stopped less than a meter away from her, close enough that she could smell the meat on his breath. Admiral Vasquez argued very persuasively for human expansion. He took my home from me. Now I will take something from him. 3 decks away, in the human quarters, Max was going insane. He paced back and forth across the small room, whining and scratching at the door. His nose told him something terrible was happening. The fear scent that had clung to Elena when she left was burning in his memory, and every second that passed made the wrongness feel worse. Lieutenant Chun came to check on him, as Elena had promised. He opened the door and found Max wild-eyed and frantic, nothing like the calm, dignified dog he had seen before. "Hey, buddy, what is wrong?" Chun asked, kneeling down. "Where's the commander?" Max looked at him with desperate eyes. Then he looked at the door. Then back at Chun. His meaning was as clear as any spoken words could be. "Something is wrong with my human. I need to find her. She's at some diplomatic thing," Chun said. "She will be back soon." Max whined, a high, thin sound of pure distress. He scratched at the door again, his claws leaving marks in the metal. Chun's instincts, trained through years of military service, started to wake up. Dogs did not act like this for no reason. Search and rescue dogs especially did not act like this for no reason. "Okay," he said slowly. "Let me check something." He pulled out his communicator and tried to contact Elena. Nothing. Static. He tried again. Same result. "That is not right," Chun muttered. Communication blackouts did not happen on Concord Station. The systems were too well designed. He opened the door to go find a security officer, and Max was through it before he could react. The dog shot down the corridor like a bullet, his claws scraping against the deck plating as he ran. "Max, stop!" Chun shouted, but the dog was already gone, vanishing around a corner faster than Chun could follow. Max ran. He did not know where Elena was, but his nose knew her scent better than it knew anything else in the universe. He found traces of her in the corridor where she had walked. He followed those traces through crowds of aliens who jumped out of his way in surprise. He followed them down lift tubes and through maintenance hatches, taking shortcuts that his instincts somehow knew would be faster. He was not thinking anymore. Not in any way that could be called conscious thought. He was pure purpose now. 40,000 years of wolf and dog and loyal companion focused into a single burning need. Find her. Protect her. Save her. Nothing else mattered. 3 decks above, on observation deck 17, Elena was fighting. Thesic had grabbed her arm, and she had responded by breaking his smallest finger and driving her knee into his stomach. The other warriors rushed forward, but she was fast and desperate and willing to hurt them in ways they had not expected. But there were too many of them. 6 against 1. She could not win. She knew she could not win, but she could make them work for it. She heard the maintenance hatch explode open behind her, but she did not have time to wonder what it meant. She was too busy trying to stay alive. Then she heard the growling, and everything changed. The Varax had not researched Earth animals. Why would they? The planet was a small, unremarkable world on the edge of explored space. The only species worth knowing about were the humans themselves, and the Varax already knew everything they needed to know about humans. They were soft. They were sentimental. They were easy to frighten. So when the maintenance hatch exploded inward and 35 kilograms of snarling fury launched itself at Thesic's throat, the Varax were completely unprepared. Max hit the warlord like a missile made of teeth and rage. His jaws closed on the soft skin beneath Thesic's ceremonial armor, the only place on a Varak's body that was not protected by thick scales. Blood sprayed across the deck, plating as Thesic screamed and stumbled backward, all four arms flailing uselessly as he tried to throw off the creature that was tearing at his neck. The other warriors froze for half a second, shocked by the sudden appearance of this impossible animal. That half second was all Elena needed. She grabbed the nearest Varax by his weapon arm and twisted. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the observation deck. The warrior screamed and dropped his plasma pistol, which Elena caught before it hit the ground. She fired twice, putting two warriors on the floor before the others could react. Max released Thesic and spun to face a warrior who was trying to aim at Elena. The dog launched himself at the Varax's gun arm, biting down with crushing force and refusing to let go no matter how hard the warrior shook him. The alien's shots went wild, burning holes in the ceiling and walls as Max dragged his arm down and away from Elena. Two warriors left standing. Elena shot one in the chest before he could raise his weapon. The last one, seeing how badly things had gone, turned and ran for the door. Max let go of the arm he had been holding and chased. He caught the fleeing Varax before he made it 3 meters, his teeth finding the back of the warrior's leg and bringing him crashing to the deck. The Varax tried to kick him away, but Max was relentless, biting and tearing and never stopping even when the alien's claws raked across his side. Elena reached them and put the warrior to sleep with a precise strike to the nerve cluster at the base of his skull. Then she turned to check on Max. There was blood on his fur. Some of it was Varax blood, dark and thick, but some of it was red. His blood. A plasma graze had burned across his left flank, leaving a wound that looked painful and ugly. "Max," Elena whispered, dropping to her knees beside him. "Oh God, Max." Max looked up at her with tired, happy eyes. His tail wagged weakly against the deck plating. He had found her. He had protected her. Everything else was unimportant. Behind them, Thesic groaned and tried to stand. His neck was torn and bleeding, but Varax were tough. The wound was not fatal. He would survive. "You," he rasped, staring at Max with something like horror. "What is that thing?" Elena stood up slowly, the plasma pistol hanging at her side. Her voice was cold and steady when she answered. "His name is Max. He is my dog. And you just learned why humans keep them around." She walked over to Thesic and looked down at him with no mercy in her eyes. "We are not weak because we love things that can die. We are strong because we have something to fight for. Max does not know about politics or territory or revenge. He just knows that I am his human, and nothing in the universe was going to stop him from reaching me. It is just a beast," Thesic said, but his voice shook. "It has no weapons, no armor, no intelligence. He has 40,000 years of evolution telling him to protect his pack." Elena smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "Your weapons did not stop him. Your armor did not stop him. And your intelligence could not even predict he would come. So tell me, Warlord, which one of you is the beast?" The station security forces arrived 12 minutes later. Someone had noticed the communication blackout and sent a team to investigate. They found 3 Varax unconscious, 2 more bleeding on the floor, and their warlord pinned beneath a human woman while a wounded Earth dog stood guard over them both. Ambassador Kethvorn was among the first responders. The ancient Silithian stopped in the doorway, his crystalline face showing an expression that few had ever seen on him. Surprise, and something else. Something that might have been respect. "Commander Vasquez," he said slowly. "Are you injured?" "I am fine, but Max needs medical attention." Elena's voice cracked on the words. The adrenaline was fading, and the fear she had been holding back was starting to break through. "Please, help my dog." Kethvorn looked at Max. The dog was still on his feet, still watching the fallen Varax with wary eyes, still ready to fight even though he was wounded and exhausted. His loyalty had not wavered for a single second. "Bring the medical team," Kethvorin ordered. The human and the animal both. As they waited for help to arrive, Kethvorin approached Elena carefully. He looked at Max for a long moment, then back at her. "I have lived for 9,000 years, he said quietly. "I have seen wars and plagues and the deaths of stars. I thought I understood the nature of courage, but I have never seen anything like what this creature did tonight." Elena stroked Max's head with trembling fingers. He did not think about whether he could win. He did not think about the danger. He just knew I needed him, and he came. "The security recordings will show what happened," Kethvorin said. "He crossed nearly a kilometer of station infrastructure to reach you. The ducts, service tunnels, maintenance hatches. He followed your scent through places he had never been, to fight enemies he had never seen, with no hope of victory. That is what dogs do," Elena said simply. "That is what they have always done. They love us so much that they would die before they let anything hurt us." Max's tail wagged weakly at the sound of her voice. He pressed closer to her leg, ignoring his wound, ignoring his exhaustion. All that mattered was that his human was safe. The medical team arrived and took Max away on a stretcher designed for beings much larger than him. Elena walked beside him the entire way, holding his paw and telling him he was a good boy, the best boy, the bravest dog in the entire galaxy. And Kethvorin watched them go with something new in his ancient eyes. For the first time in millennia, he was beginning to understand why humans love so deeply and so recklessly. Not because they did not know the pain of loss, but because they had decided that some things were worth any amount of pain. He wondered if his own species had forgotten something important. Somewhere in their long journey to immortality, he wondered if they had forgotten how to truly love. The tribunal lasted 3 days. Representatives from every major species on the station gathered to hear the evidence against Warlord Desic and his warriors. The charges were serious: kidnapping, assault, conspiracy against a member of a diplomatic delegation. The evidence was overwhelming. Security recordings showed everything that had happened on Observation Deck 17. From the moment Elena arrived to the moment the security forces found her standing over the defeated Vorax. The tribunal ruled in humanity's favor. Desic was stripped of his rank and sent back to the Vorax hegemony in disgrace. His warriors would face trial on their homeworld. The Vorax delegation was recalled, and formal apologies were demanded from their government. But the political victory was not what captured the attention of Concord Station. What spread through the station like fire was the other recording, the one from the security cameras in the corridors and maintenance tunnels, the one that showed a dog running through nearly a kilometer of space station, following nothing but scent and love, and the desperate need to protect his human species that had never understood humanity's bond with their companion. Animals watched the footage again and again. They saw a creature with no weapons, no armor, no hope of victory against armed Vorax warriors. They saw him charge in any way. They saw him fight with everything he had, taking wounds that should have stopped him, refusing to give up until his human was safe. And they began, slowly, to understand. Elena spent most of those 3 days in the medical bay, sitting beside Max's bed. The doctors had cleaned and sealed his wound. They said he would recover fully in a few weeks. But Elena could not make herself leave him alone, not even for an hour. She slept in a chair beside him, ate meals brought by Lieutenant Chen, and talked to Max constantly, even though he could not understand most of what she said. On the 4th day, Ambassador Kethvorin came to visit. The ancient Silithine stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching Elena stroke Max's fur while the dog slept peacefully. His crystalline face was unreadable, but there was something different about him. something softer than before. "May I come in?" he asked. Elena nodded, and Kethvorin moved to stand beside the bed. He looked down at Max with an expression that might have been wonder. "I have been thinking," he said slowly, "about what I witnessed. About what your companion did." "He is a good dog," Elena said simply. "He's more than that." Kethvorin turned to face her. "We thought you foolish, Commander. My people, the Varaks, so many others. We thought it was foolish to bond with something so brief. We have spent millennia learning not to love things that end. We thought this made us wise. And now? Now I am not certain." Kethvorin was quiet for a moment. "In 9,000 years, I have had many companions, political allies, business partners, beings I worked with for centuries. But I have never had anyone who would cross a space station to save me. I have never had anyone who would fight impossible odds without hesitation, simply because I needed them." Max stirred in his sleep, his paws twitching as he dreamed. Elena reached out and touched his ear, and he settled immediately, comforted by her presence even in dreams. "That is the thing about mortality," Elena said softly. "It does not make love meaningless. It makes love urgent. Every moment matters because we do not get infinite moments. Max does not know he's going to die someday. He just knows I'm his person, and he would give his life before he let anything happen to me." "Such love seems exhausting," Kethvorin observed. "It is, but it is also the most beautiful thing in the universe." Elena smiled, though there were tears in her eyes. "You have had 10,000 years to learn how to live. But maybe you need a dog to teach you why." Kethvorin had no response to that. He simply stood there, looking at the sleeping dog and the woman who loved him. And something ancient and frozen inside him began, very slowly, to thaw. In the weeks that followed, something strange started happening on Concord Station. Diplomats from species that had mocked humanity's bond with animals began asking questions. Not cruel questions anymore, but genuine ones. What did dogs need to survive? What did they eat? How did humans form bonds with them? Was it possible for other species to keep dogs as companions? The human delegation, surprised but pleased, did their best to answer. They explained that dogs needed exercise and food and medical care, but mostly they needed love. They needed someone to be loyal to. They needed a pack. 3 months after the incident on Observation Deck 17, the first non-human adoption request was filed. A Fenari diplomat named Sella asked if it would be possible for her to adopt a dog from Earth. She had watched the recordings of Max's rescue many times. She had talked to Elena about the nature of their bond, and she had decided that she wanted to try, even knowing that she would outlive any dog by nearly 2,000 years. Her request was approved. A golden retriever puppy named Sol was brought to the station on the next transport from Earth. Sella held him for the first time with trembling hands, feeling his small heart beat against her chest. And she began to cry. "He is so warm," she whispered. "So alive." "He is yours now," Elena said gently. "Take care of him." Other requests followed. A Silithine ambassador adopted an elderly Labrador who needed a quiet home. A group of Fenari scientists started a research project on the human-canine bond. Even some of the Varaks, disturbed by what they had witnessed, began to reconsider their assumptions about weakness and strength. Max recovered fully from his wounds. He returned to his routine of walks in the biodome and naps by Elena's feet, apparently unaware that he had become famous throughout the station. But sometimes, when Elena took him through the corridors, beings who had once mocked him would stop and watch with something like respect in their eyes. And sometimes they would approach, carefully, and ask if they could pet him. Max always let them. He had never met a person he did not like, whether they had 2 arms or 4, whether their skin was soft or covered in scales. He just wagged his tail and leaned into their touch, offering the same unconditional love he offered everyone. One evening, nearly a year after the incident, Elena sat in the biodome and watched Max play with Soul. The golden retriever puppy was still learning the rules of dog games, but Max was patient with him, letting the youngster win sometimes, teaching him how to be a good dog through example rather than correction. Sela sat beside Elena, watching her own companion with wonder that had not faded in all the months since she adopted him. "I think I understand now," Sela said quietly, "what you meant about urgent love. Soul will live maybe 15 years. I will live 2,000. But every day I spend with him feels more valuable than centuries I spent being careful with my heart." Elena smiled and put her hand on Sela's arm. "That is the secret we learned 40,000 years ago," she said, "when the first wolves approached our campfires. Life is short. Love is shorter. But if you love with your whole heart, even for a little while, it changes you forever." Max came running back with a stick in his mouth, his tail wagging wildly. Soul bounded after him, trying to grab the other end of the stick. They tumbled together in the artificial grass, a tangle of fur and joy. And Elena watched them with a heart full of love and sorrow and gratitude, knowing that someday she would lose Max, knowing that the loss would break her, and not caring at all. Because some things were worth any amount of pain. Some loves were worth any ending. And Max, her brave and beautiful dog, had reminded an entire galaxy of that simple, powerful truth.